Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are on day 3, session 2 of the 2024 6 Million Seeds Child Nutrition Summit. We have had a rockin' and rollin' couple of days, today included. Today we are talking about environment and the impact that our eating patterns have on our precious planet Earth. My name is Meryl Fury. I am a registered nurse and I am President and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, and we are hosting this summit uh, on behalf of our children and the difference we need to make in the planet for them to keep it a living and viable place. Like I said, today's subject is environment, hence my shirt today. We will be speaking with this session is with Dr. Sailesh Rao. I will read his bio, which is by no means the full depth and breadth of everything that this amazing man has been doing his whole life and continues to do. So these are just the highlights, and you can check out his full bio on our website. Dr. Sailesh Rao is coming to us today from India, 12 hours difference from where we are. It's 3 o'clock my time. It's probably 3 o'clock in the morning, his time. So we so honor and respect and appreciate you for being here. He is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a nonprofit dedicated to healing the Earth's climate. Dr. Rao is a human, earth, and animal liberation or HEAL activist. He's a husband, a dad, and a star-struck grandpa since 2010. He's promised his granddaughter, Kimaya Rainy Rao, that the world will be largely vegan before she turns 16, and that's in 2026, so that people will stop eating her relatives. And he'll tell you about that story. He has faith that humanity will transform to keep his pinky promise to his beloved granddaughter, not just for ethical reasons, but also out of sheer ecological necessity. Along with Kamaya, Dr. Rao was the co-recipient of the inaugural Homo Ahimsa Award from the Interfaith Vegan Coalition in 2021. He's the author of numerous books, one of which is The Pinky Promise, which we have in our VIP bundle. And he is an executive producer of some of the most well-known vegan and animal activists and climate change documentaries of our time. So Cowspiracy in 2014, What the Health in 2017, A Prayer for Compassion in 2019, They're Trying to Kill Us in 2021, The End of Medicine in 2022, Milked in 2022, Cryspiracy in 2024, I Could Never Go Vegan in 2024. Just amazing, as well as his work is featured in the award-winning film Countdown to Year Zero, which was produced by Jane Velez Mitchell and Unchained TV. This man's passion and compassion knows no bounds, and I am so deeply honored to have him here with us today to tell us the story about the Pinky Promise and all the things around that. Dr. Rao, welcome.
Thank you so much, Meryl.
My
I'm
pleasure.
going to share my screen. Touch. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about the greatest transformation in human history. This is the transformation from a climate heating species to a climate healing species. The transformation has already begun. It's already happening. And it's happening one at a time, and it's now has to happen as a system as well. So I'm a systems engineer by profession, and I went to this forest in Rajasthan, India, and I took this picture. As soon as I took this picture, I went vegan on the spot, because I realized that my consumption of dairy was causing this forest to die. Because you can see the stone fence in the middle. To the right, I could see lush green forest, and to the left, I could see all these old cows walking around eating anything new that was growing on the ground. So, and I was a dairy consumer at that time. And I thought, as a consumer of dairy, I'm not doing much much damage. I'm not eating the meat, which is the most damage, right? That's how they frame it for us. But in reality, dairy is the key. So as a systems engineer, I figured out that they've been lying to us. That dairy is the key, and without dairy, the entire thing collapses. So this is why they make dairy look like it's not that harmful. And in reality, it is the root of all evil that happens on the planet. Because when the dairy cows finish eating, there is nothing new growing on the ground. And then the deer dies, and there is nothing for the deer to eat. When the deer dies, the tiger dies. The entire forest dies because by the time the dairy cows finish. And with dairy, you're paying for the cow on a daily basis. Okay, so you're buying dairy on a daily basis, and you're paying for the cow on a daily basis, which means when the cow is finished, she becomes a cheap beef. So there is no McDonald's, cheap hamburgers without dairy cows. And this is why governments around the world promote dairy. Okay? So I realized all of this. In one flash in my mind, it hit me. Oh my God, I am doing the worst. And I went vegan on the spot. Now, people go vegan for several reasons. There are multiple portals through which we come to veganism. Ethics is one, because of what we do to the animals is horrible. Health, a lot of people come to veganism from a health perspective. A lot of people come to veganism from spirituality. And I came to veganism from the environmental portal. Ultimately, no matter which portal you came through, you will get to see all of them as you go deeper and deeper into this practice. Because veganism is a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. That's the definition, right? And when you come to veganism from the environment, which is how I came to it, you have a sense of urgency. As if as if why is this not moving? Oh yeah, hold on. Okay, yeah. As if our house is on fire. And this is actually my house that caught fire in 1993. It's a brand new house. It was a brand new house I had bought. And I bought a brand new car, parked it in my garage. And next morning, the car caught fire. And I had no idea that the car had caught fire. I was in the kitchen making coffee for myself. The reason I want to tell you this is because when you discover that there is a fire in your home, you change your routines. You're no longer interested in making coffee. You're no longer interested in reading the newspaper or worrying about what to have for breakfast or lunch or whatever. You are focused on putting out the fire. Our children were there in the room above the garage, and they were the ones that discovered the fire. Okay, and when they discovered the fire, they discovered the smoke coming out of the vents in the room above the garage. So I went down to see, and I saw the car spitting flames at me, and my only thought was to save my children, nothing else. So this is how people react when they discover that there's a fire in our home. And what happened to me in 2008, when I took that photograph in Rajasthan, is that I discovered that my home, my planetary home, was on fire. So it's as if we have a multi-alarm fire going on our planet. In 2009, it was a 3-alarm fire. And by 2015, they said it's a 4-alarm fire. And by 2023, now it's a 6-alarm fire. And every alarm is getting louder and louder. So the only thing you have to think about is, how do you put out this fire in your home? Because this fire, these alarms that are blaring about the fire on our planetary home, is blaring at us saying all life is going to die if you don't deal with this fire. Okay? So I had that tremendous sense of urgency. And the good news is that if the world goes vegan, we can literally put out all the fires. All the alarms will go down, okay, go away. Now, everyone knows, the scientific community knows that for this alarm, going vegan is the leading solution, that animal agriculture is the leading cause. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of freshwater change. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of land system change. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of biosphere integrity. They know that. And animal agriculture, if you eliminate animal agriculture, you can address chemical pollution as well. But the way the environmental problem is being framed to us is a very narrow media focus around fossil fuels. So they picked one of these fires, one of these alarms, climate change, and they just blow it out of proportion. And they don't talk about any of the other alarms. Okay? They only talk about climate change. And within climate change, they only focus on fossil fuels and not the cow in the room. Why would they do this? Why are they doing this? Because they're trying to make money of our environmental problems. Because that's what the system is designed around. How to make money off of every problem. I'm an engineer. I'm trying to solve problems. This is what I do for a living. And when I look at a problem and I look at all 6 alarms and I say, okay, what is the one thing we could do to address all these alarms? I quickly zeroed in on going vegan. And then I was also calculating how soon do we have to do this? How soon do I have to convince everyone on the planet to help us put out the fire on the planet? And I did this based on the biggest alarm that's going on, which is the loss of wildlife. Wild animals are dying in front of our eyes. Okay. So I was watching the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report. It's a comprehensive survey of over 3,000 species that the World Wildlife Fund has been doing since 1970. Okay. So they know what was there in 1970, and based on that, they're saying, okay, how many animals are left? How many animals are left? And they issue a report every 2 years. And it takes them 4 years to compile the data. So they issue the report for 2010 in 2014. In 2014, the report came out saying that between 1970 and 2010, 52% of all wild animals disappeared on the planet by total weight. And when that report came out, I was shocked. When as an engineer, I wanted to extrapolate to see how many more years of this do we have left before we wipe them all out. And I did my calculation assuming that we were killing wild animals proportional to the size of our economy. And it said, my calculation showed me that we are on track to hit 100% by 2026 in 16 years. So we wiped out 52% in 40 years. The next 48% we can wipe out in 16 years. That was my calculation. Because our economy has gotten bigger and bigger, right? So I was shocked. I thought maybe my calculations are wrong, because I'm doing this simple-minded model. So I thought I would wait until the next report comes out. And that report came out in 2016, August of 2016. And it said that between 1970 and 2012, we wiped out 58% of all wild animals. So it went from 52% to 58% in 2 years. So at that point, I knew that my calculations were in the ballpark. 2026 became, for me, a do or die year, We better get it done by then. That evening, I was putting my granddaughter to bed, and I promised her that I'll never, ever lie to her. So usually I read her a story, and then she puts her head on my shoulder. She asks me some questions. We discuss some things, and then she goes to sleep. So this time, she put her head on my shoulder, and she said, "Grandpa, who were the first human beings?" And I promised her that I'll never, ever lie to her. So I was trying to explain to her how evolution works. So I said, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mother by your hand. You ask your mother to bring her mother to stand by her side, and so on. So create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother, and so on. By the time these 2 lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they will merge, because both lines are going to say, hey, that's my mama too. Because I knew that the common ancestors of chimpanzees and humans were about 3 to 5 million years ago. And I was calculating, 3 feet per woman standing next to each other. And so it's 140 miles between Phoenix and Tucson. So yeah, we're in the ballpark of 3 to 5 million years. Immediately, she just sat up in bed. She said, "What? Are you telling me that animals are my family?" I said, "Yeah, now that you put it that way, yeah, they are your family." She said, then why are people eating my family? "Grandpa, make them stop. They're eating my family." And she started bawling. She started naming names of people she knows who are eating her family. And I realized that by trying to tell her the truth, I had traumatized my granddaughter. Just watching her getting traumatized. And I was trying to console her. And I said, "Kimaya, this is what I do. It's my job to make them stop." Immediately, she stopped crying. She looked at me. She said, "What? This is your job? This is your job? You know you haven't done your job." And then she shook her finger in my face and said, "Do your job." And then she asked me, "When will you do your job?" And I blurted out, "I better do it by 2026, otherwise we are in big trouble." She said, "Will you promise me that?" I said, "Okay, I'll promise you that." She said, "Will you give me a pinky promise?" I said, "Okay, I'll give you a pinky promise." And she said, "Hold out your pinky." And then she locked her pinky in mine and said, "You can never, ever break a pinky promise." And then she went to sleep. And I couldn't sleep because I realized I'd made a very serious promise to a little girl on behalf of my generation to her generation that we are going to solve this problem for them. Okay, it's our job to solve this problem for them. But then, when you look at everything in nature is perfectly designed to be part of the ecosystem. Every animal belongs exactly as she is. An elephant looks like she's being destructive and she's breaking branches of trees. But wherever she broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams to nourish the underbrush. Wherever the elephant trampled on bushes, that's where new pathways are formed in the forest. So the elephant has no choice but to belong in nature exactly as she is. In the same way, we have a story for ourselves. We also belong in nature exactly as we are. We are the species that has the superpower of fire. So we can start fires anytime we want. And that's our superpower. Okay? That's what nature gave us. Mother Nature gave us the superpower. Now you ask, why did she give us this superpower? Why are we able to start fires whenever we want? Isn't that why we are destroying the planet? Because we are starting fires everywhere? Or is that a superpower? And you have to understand the situation that we were born in. We were born at a time when the Earth is going through a major ice age. In the past, 300 million years ago, the Earth was in a major ice age. And we have identified about 5 major ice ages. And this is either the 5th or the 6th major ice age that we are in today.
Wow.
So here is the time, 0, is current time. And so 33.9 million years ago is the current ice age started. It's called the Cenozoic Ice Age. And you see the blue line, it's the latitude to which ice was found on the planet. Okay. And the orange line and the green line all represent carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. And you can see whenever the carbon dioxide levels are low, you get an ice age. And then it goes up and it heats up the planet and then comes back, So now we are in an ice age. And this time the carbon dioxide levels are really, really low. And the Earth has been going in and out of an ice age, a mini ice age, for the last 3 million years. So during this time, she spawned us as a species. And if you were to map the temperature of the Earth for the last 3 million years, it'll look a bit like this. You see the white line? That's the temperature going up and down, up and down. When it's low, it's an ice age. When it's high, it's a warm period. Okay? So warm periods were actually very, very short, maybe less than 5,000 years or 10,000 years. And the ice age was the majority of the time, so 90,000 years. So every 100,000 years, it goes in and out of an ice age like that. And during this time, she spawned us as a species. She gave us control of fire 500,000 years ago. So I'm just telling you this story as if Mother Earth knows exactly what she's doing. Okay? She's so much smarter than us. Right? So she gave us control of fire. And then she gave us partnership with wolves 50,000 years ago. This allowed us to migrate out of Africa. We all came from Africa. So we went out of Africa, went to every part of the world, and we colonized every part of the world during the previous ice age. So imagine our ancestors walking across ice bridges, going to different parts of the world. Okay. And then here is the current warm period. And it looks exactly like the warm period that happened 3 ice ages ago, except instead of going down to another ice age again, it stayed flat and it went up. The temperature stayed flat and went up. The blue line is the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. So this is all done by drilling through ice cores in Greenland, slicing it layer by layer and analyzing the air bubbles. And this is science, okay? This is science that got us all this data. Without science, we wouldn't even know that this is what happened. So now you look in to see what happened here. And you look at the CO2 levels in the atmosphere, it matched what was happening 3 ice ages ago until about 6,000 years ago, and you see it then take off. Same with the methane levels. It matched what was happening until about 4,000 years ago, and then it take off. Okay. That's how we have been heating the climate. Our ancestors started heating the climate. See, if you look at the temperature of the Earth, it came out of the Ice Age about 11,700 years ago. Until then, it was in the, there was a mile of ice on top of Chicago. And 11,700 years ago is when the Great Lakes formed. And then the temperature went above the glaciation threshold. And if it had followed what was happening 3 ice ages ago, it would have gone back another ice age 5,000 years ago. Instead, our ancestors chopped down trees, burned down forests, raised animals, and heated the climate. They prevented the Earth from going back another ice age. So they kept the temperature constant for 10,000 years. This is the Holocene era, where the temperature was constant. It's not, it happened by accident. No, it happened by accident because our ancestors were doing it unknowingly. And then 200 years ago, we discovered fossil fuels, and then we discovered how to industrialize our production. And we started raising animals by the billions, and so all those activities heated up the climate even more, and the temperature has gone up by about 1.5 degrees Celsius this year. And now we are facing this inflection point. We have to decide what to do. We can continue heating the climate, in which case we are all going to die, no question, because just like our body has a 3 degrees Celsius fever, it's close to death. 4 degrees Celsius, we're going to die. Same with the Earth. If you just heat up the climate and increase the temperature by 4 degrees within 100 years, life dies. Okay, so that's our option. If we keep doing it, Earth is going to die, and then we're going to die with it. Or Earth may recover, we die, and Earth may recover, and then we'll go back another ice age again because we won't be around. Or we can take on our responsibility. As soon as we admit it, that we are changing the climate of the planet, we own the climate of the planet. So those who heated the climate can heal the climate. So we can then deliberately start cooling the climate, bringing the temperature back to the thermostat setting, what was there 200 years ago, because we know that was stable for 10,000 years, right? It's a stable point in the climate system. Bring it to that stable point in the climate system and hold it there for as long as we want. So I call this the climate healing phase, and then this holding it as long as we want, the climate harmonizing phase. And we can do this because of how we use the Earth. To understand how to do this, we have to know how we use the Earth today. See, we have taken over 91% of the Earth's land surface for ourselves. And of course, the entire ocean too. If you take all the land that we're using for cities and railroads and all the built land on the planet, it's only 1% of the land area of the planet. 19% is unused land, deserts and mountains, etc. 22% is basically timberland, where we grow trees of the same kind and chop them up and use them for timber or turn them into paper and so on. So that's 22% of the land area of the planet. The trouble with creating monocultures like that is that wild animals cannot live there because they have only one tree. See, unless they eat pine nuts, they're not going to sit there, right? Original forest is only 9% of the land area of the planet. And this is where most of the wild animals are concentrated. Okay? And even there, we have been doing things that I'll show you later. So this 9% is original forest. Majority of the land we use is for grazing animals, 37% for grazing animals. And we have taken forest land and turned it into grazing land. We have taken wild savannas and turned it into grazing land. And then we take half the crops we grow and use it to feed our animals. So totally 43% of the land area of the planet is used to feed animals. And our farmed animals are giving us 12% of the food we eat in terms of dry weight. 85% of the food we eat is already plant-based. Okay? And it comes from 6% of the land area of the planet. And the remaining 3% of the food comes from the ocean, for which we have been bottom trawling an area the size of South America every year to get to catch the last remaining fish, to give us just 3% of the food we eat. Now, in order to do this, in order to graze animals and eat them, we have chopped down half the trees on the planet. And some of the land where we chopped down the trees became desert. So that's there in this 19% down here, right? So you chop down half the trees on the planet. So you ask the question, if I can turn this 85% into 100%, if we can just eat plants, it's not much. It's just going from 85 to 100, right? And then we can return 40% of the land area of the planet back to nature. And when we do that, we can restore the original forest and we can bring back the trees that we cut. So we did a calculation saying, if we bring back the forest that we destroyed, can we reverse climate change? And the answer was yes. You can actually suck down all the carbon that we have added to the atmosphere in recovering forests. Not only can we address climate change, not only can we reverse climate change, we can address all 6 of these alarms. Every one of these alarms will be silenced if the world goes vegan and we rewild the planet on the land that gets freed up from animal agriculture. Now, to do that, we have to change our purpose as a species. Right now, our purpose is to make money, right? Instead, our purpose should be to restore the planet. So we have to organize ourselves around a different purpose. And if we do that, if we do the vegan rewilding solution, then all 6 alarms will go from red towards green. When we restore the forest, fresh water will become plentiful for wild animals. Land system, of course, will return 40% of the land back to nature. This goes from red to green. Climate change, as I already pointed out to you, when we restore the forests, it'll reverse. Nitrogen and phosphorus, this is the other problem that's causing dead zones in the ocean, killing life. And that is because of all the fertilizer we're using to grow crops. And half the crops we're growing are to feed animals. So if we don't grow those crops, we can reduce this nitrogen and phosphorus, and this will go from red towards green. Chemical pollution. It turns out that if we go vegan, the amount of chemical pollution we eat in the food that we're eating will reduce by a factor of 10 to 100. Because right now the chemical pollution is going up in the air, it's coming down in the rain, it's being absorbed by plants, and then we take the entire plant and feed it to our cows. The cow eats the whole grass or the entire stalk, the corn stalk or the soy stalk. And then we also take, the fish that we catch is full of chemical pollution, and we grind up the bycatch of the fish and feed it to our cows. So our cows are eating such toxic food, but the milk they're producing is toxic. Okay? So it's because the chemical pollution doesn't go away. Once you eat it, it stays there in our body, and it takes our liver 7 years to filter it out. So when we start eating only plants, we get much less chemical pollution in our bodies. And simultaneously, the trees that come back on the land that we return back to nature will start sucking up the chemical pollution and storing it in their trunks. So they start cleaning up after us. And of course, then you have to stop pouring so much chemical pollution into the environment every year. So that's a different thing altogether. And then biosphere integrity is the worst. This is where the 2026 came from. And there, when you return 40% of the land back to nature, we can let wild animals come back. Now, taking this into account, I wrote a paper showing that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. So even though they were sort of distracting us and telling us it's fossil fuels, look at fossil fuels only, it turns out that if you do it right, animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change as well. It's not just for the other 5. I wrote a paper showing that it's responsible for 87% of greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis when you count it right. And then based on the 6th assessment report of the UN, I was able to update that to 118%. Now you may ask, how can anything be greater than 100%? It's because when we all go vegan, and even though you're driving around in cars and flying around in planes, exactly as we do today, you will see the CO2 level in the atmosphere come down year by year. That's what 118% means. Because that's the power of forests, to suck down the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and turn it into trees. And, everything I'm showing you is not that hard to understand. So why don't scientists talk about this? And Gus Speth sort of gave a clue as to why we don't do that. He said, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. Now, I'm an engineer, a systems engineer, and I looked at this and I said, is selfishness, greed, and apathy kind of built into human nature? Is this why we are this way? But I realized it's actually a systems issue. We have created a system that rewards selfishness, greed, and apathy. And therefore, it breeds that. If you create a system that rewards selflessness, generosity, and activism, that's what you will have in the system. So we can go either way as a species. We just created a system that drives us this way. And so that's what I've been talking about. That's what I've been working on, is what is the system transformation that needs to happen to go from a climate heating phase to a climate healing phase. In a climate heating phase, man is above woman, is above animals, and it's all about domination and destruction. Whereas climate healing phase, it's about restoration. Man and woman are here to serve the animals. It's restoration of the planet. Okay? And that's a different way of organizing ourselves. And then we can get to the climate harmonizing phase, in which we are all equal. So this is how you cool the climate healing phase. You cool the climate, and then you maintain the climate in climate harmonizing phase. I call this the caterpillar turning to the chrysalis, turning to the butterfly. So just as in nature, a species, a caterpillar becomes a chrysalis and becomes a butterfly, we are being kind of forcibly turned into this chrysalis phase, because nature is saying, hey, haven't you heard? Aren't you hearing my lessons? So she's slapping us every year, faster and faster, telling us to become this climate healing species, and then to become the climate harmonizing species later. And that requires transforming the values of the system. We have a system in which we reward deception. If you can con people, you will make a lot of money. Okay? If you can throw a curveball when you're pretending to throw a fastball, you'll make a lot of money. So we have a system that rewards deception and it rewards domination. And because of that, we have death, disease, and destruction on the planet. Death for the animals, diseases for human beings, and destruction of the planet. The 5 Ds. Now, we have to go from deception to honesty, from domination to humility. Recognize that you're just part of nature. You're just another species in nature. And we have to tell the truth. If you don't tell the truth, you can never solve problems. That's the first thing I learned as an engineer. Okay? If I don't tell the truth, it'll eventually come back to bite me. If I want to make something work, I have to be honest with myself. I have to be honest with my fellow engineers. All engineering projects are built on honesty. Otherwise, you'll never get it to work. Okay? And it begins with humility, right? Knowing that nature is the boss. And we are here to serve nature. When I talk about deception here in our system today, see the background of this picture is a satellite picture of the Amazon. And so this is how we deforest the Amazon in clumps. We leave bunches of trees behind. And do you know why we do that? It's because the UN has a rule saying that any 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid with 10% tree cover is still a forest grid. So our corporations are going around deforesting the Amazon like this, and we are all pretending that the deforestation didn't happen. Because that's the rule at the UN. So this is the con job. This is the kind of deception that's going on in the system. And Steve Kaufman said, meaningful reforms are not possible until goals change. Until we change the goals of humanity. What is our goal? Is our goal to thrive on the planet? Or is our goal to make a lot of money for ourselves? Because that's the game we are playing so far. So I looked at the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And I said, why isn't it working? For the last 10 years, you've been working on the Sustainable Development Goals. Why isn't it working? And I realized that there was an insidious goal that was put in there that made all the other goals impossible to meet. Because if you look at the goals of the UN, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, who would argue with any of that? These are great goals to have, right? And then they're stuck in a goal number 8, which is economic growth. So I realized that everybody, every nation is pretending to work on all the goals by just growing the economy. So that's the only goal that everyone really focuses on, growing the economy. Then you ask yourself the question, if you had no poverty, if you had zero hunger, if you had good health and well-being, do you care that the economy is growing? So why is that goal there? It's a deception. So I said, okay, let's take that deception out. And instead of goal number 8, I put goal number 18, which is from Beyond Cruelty Foundation. That's zero animal exploitation. And which makes all the other goals easy to meet. So now you have a set of goals that you can work on in which you will solve the problem. Okay? So as an engineer, I like to know that I'm working on the goals sincerely, that I'm able to meet them sincerely. And I'll show you why economic growth is such an insidious goal. Because the American College of Lifestyle Medicine pointed out that there are 8 risky behaviors that are driving 15 chronic conditions that are responsible for 90% of the total costs worldwide. Okay? 8 risky behaviors are poor diet, physical inactivity, smoking, lack of health screening, poor stress management, insufficient sleep, poor standard of care, and excessive alcohol consumption, in that order. And Dr. McDougall told me that poor diet is actually more than half of the cost comes from that alone. Now, in a system that's trying to grow the economy, 90% of the healthcare economy is driven by these 8 risky behaviors. So do you think they would encourage these 8 risky behaviors? That's exactly what's going on. They're encouraging poor diet in schools, physical inactivity, glamorizing smoking. So all these things are being done in the system to drive us to grow the healthcare economy. This is why economic growth is such an insidious and terrible goal to have. You need to throw that out. And today, we deceive people into consuming animal foods by telling them that animal foods have protein. But if you look at the protein composition of animal foods and the protein composition of plant foods, you will see roughly the same composition of amino acids. In fact, all plant foods have all amino acids. And it's simple-minded nutrition science to say that animal foods have the best protein. It's like telling the elephant, the best food for you is another elephant. Best food for a tiger is another tiger. No. Elephants eat just plants and they grow really big because all plant foods have all amino acids. This is one of the first lies that they tell us in school that drive the system, the protein myth. And then, of course, the calcium myth for milk consumption. It turns out that the majority of people on the planet cannot digest milk. Most people of color cannot digest milk. Europeans are the ones who have the genes that can digest milk. But even for Europeans, milk is not good food. Milk is the lactation secretions of a mammal who is 5 times our size and is designed to make her baby grow from calf to cow in 18 months. Whereas we need to grow from baby to adult in 18 years. So it's a fluid that's designed to make our body grow 40 to 60 times faster than we ever need to grow. This is why it's highly inflammatory. So how could it possibly be good food for you? So even though that's the case, governments around the world keep promoting dairy. Why? Because when we consume dairy, we are paying for the cow on a daily basis. And that's the source of cheap beef. That's the source of cheap leather. And this is another one of those myths that have been keeping us enslaved to the colonial system. In colonialism 1.0, our rulers were doing it very crudely. Like India went through 25 famines between 1857 and 1947. And more than 60 million Indians died of hunger and hunger-related causes. And they were doing these famines in order to persuade Indians to migrate to different places and become laborers. See, they had abolished slavery, you see. So they couldn't just drag us by the neck and make us go and work somewhere. They had to make us do it by ourselves. So that's what hunger was used for. And now the same thing is going on. I call it colonialism 2.0. In colonialism 2.0, they convince us to eat bad food, convince us to eat animal foods, which makes us sick. And it creates an artificial scarcity of food at the bottom. And then the people at the bottom are saying, what can I do to make some money? What can I do to get rid of my hunger? So they're doing exactly what they were doing to us in 1857 to 1947, but this time through the protein myth and through the calcium myth. Okay, by teaching us the wrong things about how to eat. So how do we solve this problem? I say, those of us who have a choice have to immediately take the 8 risky behaviors, the ACLM, and do the exact opposite for the 8 healing habits, from poor diet to healthy vegan diet, from physical inactivity to regular exercise and yogasana, from smoking to conscious breathing, from lack of health screening to regular health routines, from poor stress management to meditation and awareness, from insufficient sleep to adequate rest and sleep, from poor standard of care to a sense of purpose, and from excessive alcohol consumption to contact with nature. So when you do the 8 healing habits, you heal yourself. So this is the equivalent of putting on your own oxygen mask first. Put on your own oxygen mask first, then you can help others. So it's up to us as warriors for the planet to become healthy first. Okay? And then we can go out there and help the planet. And we have to transform our civilization from a civilization that's all about extracting from the planet to a civilization that's all about restoring the planet. So you have to educate people that we are in this transformation, spread the word about it, adopt the 8 healing actions to heal ourselves, and then change our goals. So emphasize the social goals. And then we have to organize around the restoration of the planet. So that's a different way of organizing ourselves. Today, we are organized in nation states in order to fight each other over resources. So it's basically the colonial system, it's a nation state. And then we have to create an economic system that meets our needs without going over the limits. So that's called donut economics. And we have to rewild the planet. That's our main purpose, bringing back the wild animals that used to be there. And then come home to our true vegan nature, vegan spirituality. So these are the 7 strategic initiatives. And we have to transform our money game. Because in the current money game, we are creating loans. So there is more debt than money in the system. And the money is being used to extract from the planet in order to return the debt. That's how the money system works. So this is why through the money system, we have been continued to be colonized. Okay. So the people who control the money system, they're the colonizers, right? If you think about it. And they're basically saying, it doesn't matter if you give these people independence, as long as they're stuck to the dollar, we got them. Right? So that's how they've been controlling us through the money system. So the transformation of the money game is to create a money game that flows from the bottom up in the form of allowances instead of top down in the form of debt. When you go bottom up in the form of allowances, you get the universal basic income. With universal basic income, everyone gets access to healthy food and shelter and clothing. So your basic needs are met. Then you can get healthy. And then you're asked, okay, can you come and help us restore the forests? And we will all go and help restore the forests. Why? Because if we don't do that, the planet's fire is going to engulf us. Okay? So we all become firefighters on the planet. Firefighters have to be taken care of before they go fight fires. Do they not? So that's what I mean by transforming the money game. And I teach a Bhagavad Gita course to help activists, deal with this transformation. The current course has been going on since September 6th. I teach 1 chapter per week. So we're now in the 14th chapter. So I'll keep doing that, to help people become better activists. We also had a debate about this at the Oxford Union in last year. And the students voted for us. The students voted that the future is vegan. So as soon as I said future is vegan, according to the students, we should be embracing that future as quickly as possible. Okay. So I say that there's no question that this is going to happen. And if you think about it, this is what our ancestors have been calling us to do. This is something that our ancestors started 50,000 years ago. So Kimaya did the illustration of this marathoner. 50,000 years ago, our ancestors went out of Africa, went to every part of the world with the technology of fire. They knew how to start fires. Okay. And then in the current warm period, Holocene era, they started heating up the planet. And they've been heating, and now it's getting a little too warm. And now we have a choice. We have completed 26.197 miles out of the 26.2 miles of a marathon. We can actually congratulate ourselves for having done such a good job that we have heated up the entire planet and raised its temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius. But someone who can heat the planet can also cool the planet. So we have to now start cooling the planet. Cool. That's a U-turn. And then maintain it there. So, and our generation has to take this step of cooling the planet. We cannot wait for someone else because the fire is right here, right now. Okay? We have to deal with it. But if you go straight, there's a McDonald's and there's a clown standing outside saying, come. But if you go in there, that clown is going to kill you. So what's our choice? Are we going to do this U-turn or not? It has to be a choice. We cannot compel people. This is no longer colonialism, remember? So which means it cannot be compelled. We have to make sure that people have access to healthy food. And we have to issue these new currencies. And so create this system in which people are taken care of. And then we have to say, we have to restore the forest. We have to restore the prairies. We have to restore the original ecosystem so that the forests can come back. Because we know that that used to be a stable state on the planet. And that's a joyful transformation. And I'm really, really looking forward to making that happen. And we are all doing it right now, you know. So we each are doing it in our own way. But we have to come together and do it in a systematic way so that we can solve the problem using good engineering. So thank you very much. You're muted. You're muted, Meryl.
Well, hello. That was beautiful, is what I was saying. That was, I'm so glad we were able to get that recorded. And I will be going back and reviewing that a few times. So much fresh information, looking at it in ways that I haven't heard described just like that before. So thank you so much. Really, really gorgeous. Okay, so let me just check something. Could I ask you maybe like 5 questions?
Sure.
Okay, and that will take care of our after party too.
Okay.
We just had our set of challenges getting this done today with the technical issues. So questions. So you said earlier that, and before we started recording, actually, you said that India is the key, and whichever way India goes, the world will go. Tell me what you meant by that.
Yeah. India is one of the is the largest producer of dairy in the world, and also one of the largest exporters of beef and leather in the world. Now, Indians, I mean, a lot of Hindus, India is 80% Hindu, I think. A lot of Hindus revere the cow. Now, in reality, it's basically reverence for all life. That's personified by the cow. It really should be for all life, for all animals, you know, reverence for all life. Because we have been told to treat all life as God, as sacred. So there's divinity in everyone, right? Now, a lot of Indians are not aware that India is the largest exporter of beef. They're not aware of the connection between dairy and beef. Or if they're aware, they've been trying to hide it in their psyche. If India goes to eating more and more animal foods, okay, then I think the planet is going to just careen out of control. But if India realizes that dairy is the key, they hold the key. You know what I mean? They hold the key. Because if you just eliminate the dairy industry, the entire system falls apart. Because without dairy, there is no cheap beef. Without eggs, there is no cheap chicken nuggets. In fact, the process for getting cheap beef is take a dairy cow, chop her up because she's all paid for, chop her up, and grind her body to make hamburger patties. Okay, and the hamburger patties are made in prison labor in the US. Okay, so they deliberately catch young men and throw them in jail so that they can do this labor. So it's a whole system, okay, built around exploitation of people and animals, and the mother, exploiting the mother of an animal, and exploiting her maternal secretions. So it's really abuse of the feminine that's going on in the dairy industry. So I'm saying if we can convince Indians that that's really what's going on, and India can largely then give up dairy, then the planet will be fine. Because the entire system will fall apart. And then we know, how to solve, how to create a new system that works for all of us. Right? Why are we still clinging to the system that was implemented 200 years ago in the colonial era? Now they're just figuring out more sophisticated ways of doing the same thing, right? Slavery is still going on. Colonialism is still going on. They're just trying to con us into thinking it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, sort of doing the mind game and applying
Right.
pressure in ways that it causes people to willingly and happily go into slavery or pay
Right.
for the privilege to be a slave.
Right.
Even more so. Even more so.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Rao a few months back, and that conversation left me in tears in a good way, in a very good way. And I
Oh,
have the
thank you.
same feeling now. Um, just so deeply touching, the message that you bring. So I'm going to try not to cry this time. Um, but I'll let go of my teary-eyedness and ask another question.
Yeah.
So in India, I'm going to go back to that. In Hinduism, as you said, the cow is revered and sacred, right? How has it become that the cow is also exploited?
Right.
Um, and that the milk and the yogurt and the cheese and all of that is I have a friend who told me that these are gifts that the cow is giving willingly of her own, breast. This is the mother of, was not at all able to, or it couldn't fathom the idea that there was something wrong with that, or there could be a
Right.
different way. Can you shed a little light on how did that little subtle mental gymnastic occur?
Yeah. It occurs in all of us, we want to believe something and we look for just evidence that supports our belief,
Yeah.
right? Want to believe something. And so there's a movie called Maa Ka Doodh that was released in India a couple of years ago. It's called Mother's Milk.
Mhm.
So it's a story of a doctor who discovered what was really going on with the cows. And and he when he spoke to people about the how we treat animals, they all said in India, "Oh, we don't do that here. It's only the West that this happens." He said, "Okay, in which case, I have to go and do a documentary showing exactly what's happening in India." And so that movie has been tremendously effective.
Is that available in the States?
Yeah, it's available in the States. It's available on YouTube. It's in both Hindi and in English. And the
And it's called,
statistic is that
yeah.
85% of the people who watch it, 85% of Indians who watch that movie either go vegan on the spot or they say they're going to go vegan.
Tell me, spell the name of it for us.
It's called Maa Ka Doodh,
M,
Maakadh,
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Doodh.
D-O-D, D-O-O-D-H. Great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it literally means mother's milk in Hindi,
Okay.
Maa Ka Doodh.
Mhm.
So it's been tremendously effective because it shatters that myth that we are treating the cow well, because people see that we're not treating the cow well. In fact, we are not giving the baby any of the milk. We're taking it all for ourselves because there's money there,
Yeah.
right? And then um, there's mastitis in cows. There is, blood in the milk. And it's just, I mean, the abuse that happens to the cow. It's just unforgivable.
Yep. Yep.
So people's eyes get opened when they see that.
Mhm.
But we want to do it in a much more popular way because most people don't watch documentaries. With documentaries, you're trying to reach the intellectuals,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you want to reach the mass, you have to do a mass entertainment medium. And that's what I'm here in India to work on this time.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Yeah. We wonder a lot about what is the best way to reach children.
Mm.
Now, knowing that children are under the aegis of their parents, and you got
Right.
to the parents as well. But we also think that this is why advertising companies market to children directly, because children will pester their parents for whatever they
Right.
go after. And certainly your granddaughter, wise girl that she got to you,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Children are hugely powerful in a family. They have a lot of sway. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
we wonder, do you have any suggestions for how we could get children to be more aware of the amount of control or power that they have actually
Yeah.
in choosing their diet and how it impacts the planet?
Yeah. In my book, I wrote about a visit to the kindergarten class, my granddaughter's kindergarten class. And because the kids wanted to know what veganism was. And I explained to them, I said, imagine if a rabbit walks into this room, how many of you go and hurt the rabbit? They said, oh, we'll never hurt the rabbit. I said, how many of you go and play with the rabbit? So they all said, we'll go play with the rabbit. I said, then you're all vegan, right? Because that's all it is. It's just that you wouldn't hurt animals unnecessarily. You're not mean to animals.
Mhm.
And no child wants to be mean to animals,
Right.
right? So immediately the children felt that, they could feel that they were vegan, and they could then see why Kimaya was doing what she was doing, right? So they went to their parents and said, I'm vegan.
Yeah.
And then the
I
parents
know.
freaked out, right?
I can only imagine.
Freaked out because the parents have been taught that protein is only found in meat. That is the original lie that's
Mhm.
keeping the system going.
Mhm.
Okay. So we have to bust that myth worldwide, right?
Right.
To bust that myth. And same with calcium and milk, to bust that myth. Because people think, oh, my child is going to now wither away and die because she's not getting enough protein. Even though there are so many of us vegans walking around without eating any meat, and we seem to be doing fine,
Right. Right.
it just never occurs to people. They think, oh, someday you're going to get it because you're not eating enough protein.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it's that lie, those lies that we tell children in textbooks, for heaven's sake. To me, it's a crime against humanity. I want to sue the school system. I want to sue the science teacher who wrote that book and say, how dare you lie to children?
Right.
You
Right.
know? Because to me, it's outrageous that we are lying to children. This is why I made the promise to my granddaughter that I'll never ever lie to her, because I was outraged when I found out that I had been lied to as a child,
Yeah.
you know? And this entire system is built on these two lies, this calcium myth and the protein myth, because the entire thing will fall apart if people knew the truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, and especially if they know the truth about the chemical pollution.
Mhm. So tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about that. A
yeah.
little, yeah.
So imagine, right? So we have, so we are pouring like 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and we're complaining about that. Carbon dioxide is plant food, right? It's not such a horrible gas. Okay? Now, in addition to 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide we're pouring into the atmosphere, we are pouring 220 billion tons of other toxic chemicals into the environment. And are you telling me that that's got less impact than carbon dioxide?
Mhm.
No, it has more impact than carbon dioxide. Okay. So that chemical pollution goes up into the air, it comes down in the rain, and is absorbed by trees, is absorbed by plants, and everyone is eating that chemical pollution. So it's the corporations pouring it out into the atmosphere and saying, you all pay for it. We're not going to pay for cleaning it up. Okay.
And focus on the carbon dioxide, please.
Yeah, just focus on the carbon dioxide, please. Yeah. So when you think about that, and I mean, I realized that that's a far worse problem. And sure enough, in the 6 alarms
Yeah.
for the fire, it's a bigger alarm than climate change, chemical pollution. It's a bigger alarm than climate change. Okay.
Yeah.
So scientists know that it's worse, except the media is focusing just on climate change, just on CO2, and then telling us, go buy electric cars and we'll solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is a big con job that they're doing.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So
At the
the
system
chemical,
level. Yeah.
it's a system level thing, right? And the chemical pollution, I say, imagine that if you could see the chemical pollution. So I'm thinking of a cartoon, an animation where you get this purple smoke coming out of the factory and then comes down, and then the plants become purple because it's storing all the chemical pollution. And then those who eat the plants become purple.
Mm.
So you get purple milk coming out of the cows and purple cheese and purple, and then you're eating the purple stuff and you're becoming more and more purple. Human beings are becoming purple, right? And then when you eat just the plants, that's the corn and the apples, you become your normal color again. The purple goes out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So those of us who are cleaning ourselves up now have to help others clean themselves up.
Yeah.
Okay. And eventually let the forests come back to store all the purple. Because we have already done this. There's 220 billion tons per year for the last 50 years. You think about it. There's so much chemical pollution that we've already poured into the environment. And it's not going away. It's just staying there. It's in the ocean. It's the fish are all turning purple because they're not eating good food.
Right.
So we have to start cleaning up that mess. And we have to stop putting poison into the environment, from our industrial processes, which is an engineering problem. So I'm telling my engineering institution, hey, you're teaching us the wrong things. You have to teach us how to do these things without destroying the environment. Because so far our model has been the environment is an infinite sink.
Right. Right.
Can take whatever you give to it, right?
Right.
And we are discovering it's not an infinite sink. It's a finite sink. So we have to now think about, okay, every process we create for engineering, what are the waste from the process? And is that waste poisonous for human beings and life? And if it is poisonous, how do you remediate it right away? And how do you capture it and fix it right away? And then, how do you build that cost into the product?
Right.
Because ultimately the corporation or whoever buys the product have to pay for that.
Yep.
Right. Otherwise we are saying, well, society will pay for it. I'm not paying for it. This is what corporations like to do.
Yes.
They like to just push the cost onto society.
That's right. That's right. That increases their bottom line, right? If they don't have to. Right. So let me ask you about just a couple more questions. I could talk to you for days, I think, but I won't keep you much longer. So when you went to the Oxford Union, you were speaking with the students, right? Is who you were speaking with?
Right.
And they voted that the future is vegan.
Right.
What has transpired there since that time? How long ago was it, first of all? And what's happened since?
That was a year ago. And basically, Oxford Union is a place where Oxford students get together to debate the topics of the day. So they invite people from outside to come and talk. So it's one of the top-rated debating societies in the world.
Okay.
So they had 4 people speaking for the proposition and 4 people speaking against the proposition. Right. So 4 people, I spoke for the environment. Joey Carbstrong spoke for ethics. And the president of the Oxford Union at that time was Disha Hegde. She spoke on behalf of dairy. And then Chidi Mbagwa was doctor who spoke on behalf of health. And they had four speakers on the other side saying, oh, the world should not go vegan, right? At the end of that, they vote. And the incoming president of the Oxford Union at that time was not vegan. The president was vegan, the incoming president was not. And she said, if you vote for this, I'm going to have to take away your cream from the coffee. I'm going to have to take away. And they still voted for it. So I'm going back this year to see if they really implemented what they said they were going to do. But even then, even when I went there last year, November of 2023, half the dishes were vegan on the menu. Okay, at Oxford. So any place you went to, half the dishes were vegan. And most people were not eating the non-vegan dishes. They were eating the vegan dishes because they know that the future is vegan.
Right. And you feel so much better after you eat the vegan dishes, right?
Right. Obviously, because of the chemical pollution,
right. The
because
stress,
of all of this.
the anxiety, and the anger and the upset that comes with, as to quote the young lady, and they're trying to kill us, the problems that come with flesh consuming flesh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will be interested to hear what happened when you go back. I want the update on that.
Sure.
Because that I would love to see it. I'd love to see something like that where the people they say they're going to become vegan and they actually do. They follow through for sure. Okay, one more question. Your course on the Bhagavad Gita. Is that something available for everyone to access, or how does that go if people wanted to register for that?
Yeah, right now we are in week 15. So we've gone through 14 chapters already. So there are 4 more chapters and we are done with that, right? I make it open to everyone. And so now, for the session that we started in September of this year, September 2024, we have recorded all the videos and we're going to turn it into an online course that we make available on Climate Healers for free.
Oh, wonderful.
Because I want people to have access to that information, for free. It shouldn't be that they have to pay for it or anything like that. Because I think it is basic wisdom that needs to be given away.
Yeah, beautiful. I had the chance to go to Southeast Asia in August. And I'm a practicing Buddhist myself. In American Buddhism, we don't really reach back all the way into Hinduism, right? You start with the birth of the Buddha and you move forward. That's it.
Right.
But in Thailand and Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam in its own way, a little bit different there. It was so clear that the roots of Buddhism are deep and actively still clearly attached with Hinduism. And I think that might be a great resource for American Buddhists to be able to access the course you're talking about. Because a lot of American Buddhists, thankfully the tradition that I study and practice is vegan. It's a vegan tradition. We don't, we do no harm as far as possible.
Right.
But there are so many traditions, and I would step outside of that. Any of the faith-based paths, most of them are connected to eating meat or animal sacrifices or something.
Right.
I'll look for your course on the Bhagavad Gita. I look forward to that, to check that out, and I'll recommend it to people as well. Well, I feel like I've taken up an awful lot of your time in the wee hours of the morning. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done and you continue to do. And thank your granddaughter for us, for her holding you to task.
Yeah. Yes.
And igniting this fire that continues to it's a fire that's cooling the planet in this case, which is wonderful. Yeah. So wonderful. So grateful to have made your acquaintance, Dr. Rao. This has
My
been
pleasure. Thank you, Meryl. Thank you for all the work you do,
Our
bringing
pleasure.
this to the world. Yeah.
Our pleasure. Our honor, actually. Well, I will let you go. We will talk to you again sometime soon. I'm sure everybody who's watching this on replay, you have just had the biggest treat to spend this time with Dr. Rao listening to his presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you.